Welcome to the Scouting Expedition podcast, courtesy of the Cascade Pacific Council of the Boy Scouts of America. This is more than just a podcast, it's an adventure cast. Here we'll share stories and insights about the lifelong adventure, real-world grit, and personal growth only found through scouting here in the Cascade Pacific Council. We'll have guests here indoors, but also head outdoors to meet those that make the Scouting Expedition come to life for thousands of local youth here in Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington. Each episode will start with the latest news, reminders, and important deadlines for our families, scouts, leaders, and volunteers, so you can just take a quick listen or watch in a way that's convenient for you. Then we'll dive into the topic of the day. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Cascade Pacific Council Scouting Expedition podcast. My name is Chris Bartell. I am the Director of Marketing and Innovation here at the Cascade Pacific Council, and I'm super excited to have you here. As you just heard in our introduction, that we will be doing a news update on all of our podcast episodes, and this news update actually comes from your Compass Points newsletter. So you're going to want to reference that when it comes to links, or you can go to our website, of course, too, at cpcbsa.org. But during the podcast, we're not going to share QR codes and links and talk about links and things like that, because we have so many people that will be listening or watching or vice versa or changing things up. So your best bet is to go back, because I'm here to encourage you to go back and look at your email newsletter so that you get all of the links and all of that information there. All the details are there. And of course on our website as well. So we're going to jump right in here. Again, super excited to have you here. We have some awesome guests because we're going to talk about the vision, the future, and some of the past about scouting in the Boy Scouts of America, and specifically here in the Cascade Pacific Council. And so on today's Scouting Expedition, we'd like to welcome current Board Chair Kaleen Deatherage, incoming Board Chair Andrew Danner, Council Commissioner Kathleen Jordan, and CPC Scout Executive and CEO Gary Carrol. We've asked them here today to talk about their own scouting expeditions so you could get to know them better, but also to chat a bit about where we've come and where we're headed with scouting in the CPC and beyond. So first, before we go to them, I'm going to go through our news portion of the podcast. So let's jump right into it, shall we? So for our first and most important news item here for the day here, and again, this is in your Compass Points email newsletter for all of you members here of the Cascade Pacific Council of the Boy Scouts of America. But our first item here is that we have some important adult registration changes, that all adults attending any overnight outings with Scouts must now be fully registered. That means you have to have completed an adult application, completed youth protection training, and you have to have approval on your BSA criminal background check. And this can actually take between 5 and up to 30 days. So you do not want to wait until the last minute, because if you show up at camp or you show up at an outing and you haven't gone through this, you're out. That's just the new rules, gang. So we really want to emphasize that you need to do this now, because it is good for a year. And so your youth protection and all of that, and your background check, and of course your adult application. And so we want to make sure that you do this as soon as possible. There is an exception for Cub Scout adults doing overnights, that Cub Scout parents or legal guardians who are participating in an overnight with the Cub Scout program or with their own child or legal ward are not required to register as leaders. Although it is encouraged, of course, at all times. But really important, gang, you just can't show up at camp at the last minute and just register as an adult. And it's because you've got to take youth protection training and you've got to have that criminal background check approved. So do it now. And this is also just a great time to remind you to go ahead and do your health checkup as well. Then you're all good for summer camp. So do it now. Speaking of summer camp, who doesn't love summer camp? We have the most amazing camps here in the Cascade Pacific Council of the Boy Scouts of America. And you know what we want to do is we, of course, want to encourage more youth to go to camp. We want to give scholarships away and all of that. And with that, we want to talk about Camp for All, because it's a season where we, really try and raise money and increase those scholarship amounts. And what we do need is your help. So if you'd like to join us for a Camp for All fundraiser night, and you just want to encourage people to support our camp properties, then join us on April 17th at 6:30 p.m. Again, this link for this is in your Compass Points email newsletter. It's just a great opportunity to talk to people about why they should support our summer camps, support our camp properties, through Camp for All. And you know what? We tell people just, hey, $5 or $10 a month is a great way to support the camping program here in the Cascade Pacific Council. So please join us for that if you're interested in that. We just need volunteers for that, just like you've seen on OPB, right? They do this as well and have a whole bunch of volunteers who are calling folks, and we want to do the same thing. And speaking of Camp for All, May 31st, you need to remember that that is your final deadline to meet your unit Camp for All goal, and if you meet it, you get 5% of your total amount raised on your Scout Shop gift card, which is awesome. You also, of course, will get free weekend camping at council camps and a ribbon for your unit flag. So come on out and join us for that night of calling folks to encourage them to give to Camp for All, but also don't forget to encourage your Scout unit and your adults there to help you meet that goal in your Scout unit. Another thing we want to mention here is the National Day of Prayer is on May 2nd at 5:30 p.m. Scouts literally from all over the world are going to be reading from their own sacred texts. Whatever faith you're a part of, you can go through this awesome event. You can actually be a part of it and join Scouts from all over the world to just read some sacred texts on May 2nd at 5:30 p.m. Everyone is welcome, and you can show reverence in a manner in which you are accustomed, as we always like to say at camp. Another great thing we want to mention here is on Friday, May 24th, is the Memorial Day flag placement at the Willamette National Cemetery. This is an incredible opportunity to serve the community, serve veterans, and just a way to honor our troops. It is also a wonderful event. There will be a pre-event that happens before the Scouts go out and place flags, and we need all hands on deck on this because we are going to place 180,000 flags, and we've been doing this for 56 years. It is such a touching, wonderful experience. If you have not ever been, if you've not ever seen this, it is absolutely wonderful. The entire family and friends are welcome because we have a lot of hands needed to place all these flags. It is lovely. What happens is all of the Scouts or those who are placing flags actually read the placard, place the flag, and do a salute. It is just absolutely lovely. Again, this is Friday, May 24th, and we want to emphasize that this year it is Friday, gang. It's been Thursdays for years and years and years, but this year it is Friday, May 24th, so please join us for that. Another thing we want to mention here is the new Cub Scout program resources. We are actually going to have a podcast episode coming up here pretty soon to focus on the new amazing program for Cub Scouts. It is simpler. It is easier to work with when it comes to your entire Cub Scout pack. We will have all of the details on that in an upcoming podcast. But also remember, you can go back to your Compass Points email newsletter and you get links to that. There's all the updates there on the link that you see in Compass Points. Another thing we want to mention here is Scout Shop always has amazing deals. And right now there's a 25% off for some Eagle Scout materials for your Eagle Scout Courts of Honor. But you know what? Just stop in at the Scout Shop at any time. There are always things on clearance, like incredible camping gear, real brands that you know and trust. The gear is awesome. It is the same price, if not better, than what you find at other locations. So come in and check it out at any time. You can also go to cpcbsa.org/scoutshop just for the hours and details and directions and whatnot. Another thing we want to mention is work weekends. The work weekends are super fun. Great way to give back to camp. You can see all of the opportunities to help out at camp, to grab your hammer and swing it, pound some nails, do whatever the Rangers need help with. And you can see that at cpcbsa.org/workweekends. And there are a lot of dates where the Rangers just need your help, and they love volunteers coming out for those work weekends at camp. Another thing we want to mention is there are a plethora of climbing days happening as we speak, and actually throughout the year. The climbing committee does this fantastic job of taking Scouts out into the, actually out onto real rocks and sometimes even indoors too. And so there are tons of opportunities. Check out your Compass Points. If you're interested in doing that and interested in taking your Scout unit out for that, it is a great opportunity. They will teach you everything. It is safe, it is fun, and it's happening almost every single month. A couple things we want to mention here in terms of training is that we have a bunch of training things kind of always happening, or at least always, you can always register for training opportunities throughout the year. But right now there's a lot going on. So I just want to mention a few of these things. A couple here are about fishing, the angling program, the fishing program. We have a wonderful group of volunteers who help manage this and schedule all these great trainings for it. So if you want to add fishing to your Scout Units program, this is awesome. You can actually become an angling educator and get trained for it. And you can be actually a scout age 15 and up or adult, and you'll learn fishing skills. You'll learn how to run the program for your Scout unit, your district, or even for council events. This is happening on May 18th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Beaver Creek, and it's only $15 to do that. And next up, we have archery-specific training happening, which is really fantastic in that you can actually get trained up to be able to become a range master of sorts to actually use our inflatable archery range for your next open house or event. And it is a great opportunity to learn how to really create an archery program in a safe fashion. It's happening on April 13th. And there is an online course, so you're going to want to sign up for this through your Compass Points email newsletter, and you're going to want to take the online course first, and then you'll join us on April 13th at Camp Lewis. It's only $35, but a great opportunity to learn how to teach archery merit badge as well as run that inflatable archery range for your next open house or fun event like that. Another incredible training opportunity is what we call Introduction to Outdoor Leader Skills, and another program called BALOO, or Basic Adult Leader Outdoor Orientation. These are programs for Cub Scout and Scout BSA or older Scout unit leaders who are going to be doing camping. It literally, if you know nothing, it teaches you everything and then some. It's really incredible. We have a couple of opportunities for this. One opportunity is April 13th and 14th at Butte Creek Scout Ranch. The other one that is just the older scouts, it's the Introduction to Outdoor Leader Skills. It's called IOLS. It is on April 19th through 20th at Barton Park in Boring. And the cost for those is only $35. Great opportunity to learn all you need to know about camping, creating a safe camping environment for your scouts, and to become really awesome leaders in camping. For training for youth, there is this incredible program called National Youth Leadership Training. If you've not heard about it, it is incredible training run by youth that teach. It is professional level. It is actually an incredible course. If you have youth who are ages 13 plus, they really need to go to this. And there are multiple opportunities during the summer in June, July, and August. They are week-long courses. You don't have to take one course, but they are incredible. It is professional level material and training for leadership. It all happens at Camp Baldwin, so check that out in your Compass Points email newsletter. A couple of district events we want to actually mention is that Spirit Lake District has Cub Scout Derby Day happening on April 13th at Pearson Air Museum. Spirit Lake and Cascadia are actually having their camporee on May 3rd through 5th at Fort Vancouver. River's Edge District and Timberline District are having their camporee on April 19th through 21st in Boring at Barton Park. Pacific Trail is having its district camporee May 3rd through 5th at Beneke Creek and Jewel Meadows Wildlife Area in Seaside on May 3rd through 5th, like I said. And Santiam River District is having their camporee on May 3rd through 5th as well, and it is at Powerland Heritage Park. So get the links for that in your Compass Points email newsletter. Next up, we want to talk about some partner events. These are super fun. We're going to have more of these too, so keep an eye out. But right now, what we have scheduled is the Alaska Airlines Aviation Day. It is May 11th, 2024, of course. It has flight simulators and engines, and oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's for scouts ages 11 to 18, run by Alaska Airlines. It is awesome. Again, that's on May 11th. On May 24th, we have Scout Night with the Hillsboro Hops baseball team. So that's going to be a super fun night. There will be a parade and fireworks and baseball. So much fun. And lastly, we just want to mention that next week's podcast, we're going to be focused on recruiting tips for scout units. We brought in Pack 608, and they have been our most successful unit in the entire council this last year. They recruited, I think it was 35 to 38 kids, just an incredible job. They have an incredible social media presence. And so we brought in some representatives of their team, and we're going to be chatting with them about recruiting and some great tips from them for not just packs, but troops too. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. So check that out. All right. And so here we are, finally on today's scouting expedition. We're here to welcome current board chair Kaleen Deatherage, incoming board chair Andrew Danner, council commissioner Kathleen Jordan, and CPC Scout executive and CEO Gary Carrol. And we've asked them here today to talk about their own scouting expeditions so you could get to know them better, but also to chat a bit about where we've come and where we're headed with scouting here in the Cascade Pacific Council and beyond. So now I'm actually going to hand the mic over to the team here to introduce themselves and to get this conversation started. Welcome, gang. First, let's go around the room here and hear about your personal scouting expeditions. And you know what, Gary, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us here and as a part of this conversation. I want you guys to picture a 7-year-old version of me. A little less gray in the beard. Okay, no beard at all. Maybe a little more hair on the head. And I was at school and I watched all of my little buddies in their blue Cub Scout uniforms. And I immediately came home and said to my mom, I want to do that. So we signed up and we started having great adventures. And it was just me and mom because my dad was stationed in Seoul, South Korea at the time as a member of the United States Armed Forces. He came back and we decided to move back to the Washington, D.C. area. And I continued my scouting journey. And through that, that's when my folks ended up getting a divorce. And it was really devastating because I found that I wasn't able to connect with my dad nearly as much. But scouting was able to help us to connect by him coming on the outings with me. I ended up going into summer camp and was surrounded by people who were doing good things. They were up to learning and being curious and exploring and doing all the things that I had not had a lot of experience in doing up until that time. And I was so thrilled when one of the staff members came up to me and said, hey, you really think that you could make a difference by staying here on staff and spending the rest of your summer here? And I jumped at that chance. I was able to stay that summer. That turned into a lifelong love of working at summer camp. And I just absolutely was thrilled, whether it was leading a team of junior staffers or being an aquatics director and watching kids that were afraid of the water all of a sudden be ready to jump in head first with no care in the world and that level of confidence. I just really got inspired by doing that. That turned into me being able to say yes when someone asked me if I wanted to be a scouting professional. And I was a little bit wary about it. I didn't know all the ins and outs of it. All I knew is that I wasn't so great at raising money. At least I thought I wasn't so great at raising money and asking people for money. And I didn't really feel comfortable with the word executive in my title, but I said yes. And 18 years later, I am still so passionate about what we do. I'm so inspired by the people that I get to work with, both on the volunteer and the staff side. I'm inspired about what we can do in the future. And I feel like I'm just getting started.
Gary, that's awesome.
Great story. Yeah.
I joined scouting 17 years before I ever owned a uniform. And that would have been when I was in college and when I met my partner who grew up as a scout. He was super active in the Order of the Arrow. And I would hear all about the ceremonies and the roles. And I didn't even know exactly what all of this was. But this person that I was falling for was constantly, there are no secrets in the OA, at least there wasn't in my experience, because I got everything during the time that we were dating. And so, fast forward then 17 years later, I'm 37 and we realize, first we weren't going to have kids, then we were going to have kids, then we couldn't have kids. And so now there is this question, like, what's the thing that's going to keep us young and engaged and let us make a difference? And that was really what we contemplated and prayed about. And around the same time, we had been donating to the camp where my husband grew up as a kid. And we got invited to a donor appreciation day at camp. And you guys all know me, right? We go to camp. Camp is in session. For all intents and purposes, I was a 7-year-old Cub Scout as I ran from program area to program area, literally did it all in one day because I was determined that we would climb and we would canoe and we would shoot bow and arrow and we would go to the shotgun range and I would, make a leather, thing for my belt that I didn't even know what it was. Suffice to say, it became apparent really quickly that scouting is the thing that was going to keep us young and engaged and make a difference. So we began our scouting journey. Quickly, I was working with a venturing crew, and that venturing crew was co-ed, but at that moment, almost all of the members were girls, and their older brothers, many of them, had aged out. So they had eagled, they were in the Order of the Arrow. These girls were actually in Girl Scouts also, but as soon as they turned 14, they joined venturing because they wanted to backpack. Several of them turned out to be Rangers at Philmont. 3 of the 6 that I'm thinking of were Rangers at Philmont at one point. And here I am working with them at one of the early camporees I went to. And my partner says, hey, will you guys take on this task of making these arrow things for the OA call-out ceremony? Which creates this conversation from these girls. Like, Kaleen, why can't we be in the Order of the Arrow? Why can't we eagle? And they were asking piercing, intelligent questions. And I'm looking at these beautiful, smart young women and saying, why can't you? There's no reason that you can't. That was when my passion in scouting was born. I knew that this movement needed to serve all kids and that what I felt called to do was really to become an advocate for helping scouting serve in that moment girls. And now that passion has really expanded to me. All youth means just that, all youth. And so that's really been my journey for the last 13 years. It's taken me to some pretty amazing places that I could not have imagined back then. But I am so committed to the value of this movement to every youth. And I have seen what happens when kids get the opportunity to really experience this program, to feel authentic and safe and experiment. And that's what's brought me to this moment and what inspires me for the moments that are ahead of us.
Well, I'm going to talk about 2 back to school nights. The first one as a young little Andrew. Mom takes us to the back to school night, 1st grade, while in elementary school. Here's this table. Join Cub Scouts. Mom, I want to join Cub Scouts. My parents had been divorced for a few years, so it was something that I really wanted to do. And at the time, my mom, and I have a story about her a little bit later, if that's what I wanted to do, she was going to be it some way or another. So signed up, back to school night, and off we went to our pack, and all my friends were in the pack. And what really hooked me into scouting from the Cub Scout side was the Pinewood Derby. The Pinewood Derby, I believe, is in January, February, that first year, and building that car. My mom and I are building that car together, and we get to that Pinewood Derby, and we're racing the car, and of course, I didn't win. That's okay. I had a blast. Didn't need to win. It was about having a good time. Next big adventure is for those that have been in the Portland metro area for many, many years. They've probably heard of the show, the Ramblin' Rod Show, the old cartoon show. So yes. So we used to do the Go See It. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So one of the things we did was we did a Go See It, and we went to the Ramblin' Rod Show, where I ended up in that very left corner, the first person up in the left corner, where if you remember the Ramblin' Rod Show, if you smiled big enough, you could be the smile winner. Well, I was. I was a smile winner, and I got a case. Here's another
Not
name.
surprised.
Another a case of the Pop Shop. You remember the Pop Shop? So got a case of the Pop Shop. So Pop Shop, and just continued that journey. I did not go into the Scouts BSA program, which is what we call today. So it's funny. I was a Cub all the way through Weeblos. My brother was never a Cub, but he was all the way through his journey to Eagle. So going to go forward 20 years, another back to school night. So I'm at home one evening and I think I'm watching football, and Karen comes home and she says, I have just signed Zach up. I've just signed him up for scouting, and you're going to take him to that first meeting in 2 weeks. So get to the first meeting, back to school night, 2 weeks later, and we arrive at 595 in Raleigh Hills. And we're told, well, by the way, there's only 3. We're going to fold the pack, and you should just go to a different pack. Well, there was 6 of us that ended up coming that evening, and we all looked at each other and said, this is our school. We're going to make this happen. So we all became leaders. And 20 years later, I can't believe that was in 2004. Here I am. But I really, at that moment in time, with my son Zach, and a year later, my son Pat, that journey began because of a back to school night. So back to school night as a Cub, 20 years later, back to school night. Had no idea that I would be sitting in this chair 20 years later as a volunteer. And that's how I got started in scouting.
Awesome. The Ramblin' Raj.
The Ramblin' Raj.
Well, each of those stories resonates with me, but my story is slightly different. I was a young professional, one of the first women hired by the U.S. Forest Service in the Pacific Northwest as a natural resources professional. And my first duty station was in a small rural Oregon town where I knew no one. And so I start my job there, and it was lonely. It was a little scary, and I'm very young 20s something. And one of my new coworkers said, Kathleen, we're going to help out with the scout troop because they had some boys that were going to cross over from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts. I had no experience with it, but I think I really was looking for a home and a place and some friends. And so I filled out the little registration form and put my money with it, and we sent it in, and they said, why don't you be an assistant scoutmaster? And I said, okay, tell me what that does. And they said, okay, this is what we think. It's best we understand. And so it got sent off to the council office, and it came back I was rejected because women were not allowed to hold those positions when I was asked to volunteer. So I thought that was a bit unfair because you were being judged in a way that, they didn't know me. But that journey has allowed me, because I did stay, and the journey I've been on for the last 48 years has shown me that the organization can grow and change with the time and keep their adults engaged and feeling valuable. So after I got rejected, I had already been to a meeting or two, and the problem was I fell in love with all those little boys and their new adventure and what we could do together. And then I read the book, the Scout Handbook. Never read anything like that. Couldn't put it down. I thought, wow, because I grew up in the Northwest. I grew up camping and hiking and fishing, and I love the out of doors. My family loved the out of doors, and I thought, wow, this is something I'm already partially engaged with. I partially understand. So those moments still resonate, and at least half of those boys and all of those adults I still know. So that's how powerful that joining moment was for me.
Yeah. What a great story. I mean, perseverance. I mean, great story, but from where you started and the journey that you're still on.
Well, Kathleen and I have talked so many times, right, about the journey for women, and how that has evolved over the course of all of Scouting's history, but particularly from the point that Kathleen entered the program to the point that I did.
Right.
A lot, and then since then, a lot has changed.
Right. And we're moving in a direction that is more inclusive and more open, which I think feels like the right thing to us, but it also feels like the right thing in the communities.
It's what our families need.
That's what they need.
Right.
We need.
You know, one of the things that I have been thinking about a lot, like, for those that have parented, right, think about what a parent's duty is to their child. You need to provide for them, you need to protect them, and you need to prepare them for the future. And then think about how complicated our world is today. For a lot of parents, most of their attention goes to provide and protect. And either, I think, they're so focused on the providing and protecting that gets overdialed, or it's so much of their daily energy just goes to making sure that they can provide for the needs of their child. In either way, prepare is often what gets under attended to. But what does Scouting do better than anything? We prepare. And so to me, that's where we need to meet families today. We need to understand what are the things that mom is worried about on behalf of her child. What are the things that keep her awake at night or keep dad awake at night? And how might Scouting, if we understood what those needs and those worries are, be able to come alongside that family as a partner and really help them, as every parent needs other caring and committed adults invested in their children. That's what we do beautifully. And that's where I think we have an opportunity right now. To me, it means two things. It means understanding the value of our traditions, knowing how rich those Scouting traditions are over 100 years, but not being bound by those traditions, so that we're still able to be nimble enough to meet families and kids where they are today, while also continuing to share the values that make Scouting what it is. We know how to do this, but we've got to have the courage and the intent that we're willing to both evolve and understand who we are fundamentally and convey that to the next generation of families.
I think that our community needs, in answering that question, an ability to recognize where we are. I specifically am thinking of all the polarization that has happened in the way that we talk about each other, the way that we see our neighbors, the way that we, in our own minds, other anything that looks different as if it's some sort of a threat. And I know that Scouting does a valiant effort of not just admiring the problem and looking at them and saying, well, we just all need to be a little kinder, but we actually get into action about that. We are taking demonstrable steps in making sure that young people have the ability to communicate in a way that can be understood and that they can be in a place to understand what others are saying and doing and come with an open mind instead of preconceived notions. I think that our community drastically needs that so that we can begin to start solving some of the issues that we already know exist. We know that our climate has some issues that we need to take care of, but a lot of times we don't know how to speak to each other that we can understand to actually take action. Those are the types of things that Scouting provides, and frankly, we need more Scouts to be able to help solve these issues, and more people with those types of values.
I look at Scouting and the Scouting movement as being like the connective tissue, or if you will, the glue in the community. It's multi-ethnic, it's multi-generational, it's across various religions or faiths, and it's across economic level. And there's very few things in American culture that can say that, so that we can, if we persevere and we keep moving forward, I think we can have a stronger role in being that safe place, And as you said, Gary, that not othering and not having a way to listen. Andrew and I are good friends, and we have some different beliefs or views, but I trust him, and I work with him. And so I can listen to him more easily because we have something very strong that's in common. And I suspect a lot of people in the scouting movement feel that way. And so a young person can have a conversation with somebody who's older than them and be able to hear it too, and vice versa. So those are the things I think of, and I wish for us that we can continue in improving.
Kathleen, you said something that I absolutely resonate with, and I just want to ask a random question. Have you ever been at like a family dinner, Thanksgiving, and said that you're involved in scouting, and then all of a sudden the conversation gravitates towards scouting, and that's like the most interesting thing that people want to talk about in the moment? Has that ever happened to you?
It has happened to me, yes.
Yes, it has.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that's something that we ought to be proud of as an organization, that we are deeply interconnected to the fabric of Americana and who we are as a country, and that everybody's got something to say or some sort of belief about scouting. And my experience is that it's been very good.
You know what I also think is important to say, and maybe important for us as involved as we all are, to remind each other. I mean, we all know scouting has had its struggles, as every organization that has been around as long as we have been around. They've had ups and downs, right? And sometimes it's easy to think, oh, people don't hold scouting in high regard anymore. But the truth is, to your point, Gary, I think almost everybody has a positive association story with scouting, even if they haven't been a scout. They encountered a scout somewhere. They know of a scout that did a good turn on their behalf or someone else's. I think we still actually have a really very strong, well-ingrained brand in our country. And I look at it as an opportunity. Where do we take that now? Where does that go next? And to your point, Kathleen, how do we prepare the next generation of young people as they lead out into our communities and our world to be grounded by what they learned in scouting? Right. And that's the basis that they use to address the many things that they're going to encounter as they try to make our world stronger and our communities work better.
Yeah. Having two wonderful sons who went through the program, and I think about when we meet other people and we start talking about the scouting program, and especially those that have spent time and interacted with my two sons. And I've heard this multiple times. And when someone says to you, I wish I had put my children through the scouting program. At the time, it just didn't seem relevant to our family or our needs, or whatever reasons. But to hear those stories, boy, after I met your sons, wow, amazing young men. And we wish that we put our kids through scouting. Now, scouting is one portion of, my two young men who have had a lot of balance in their life. They've met a lot of people. The great thing about this program is adult association. Love that about Zach and Pat have taken every opportunity to get the coaching and the mentoring. But so when someone says to you, I wish we put our kids through scouting.
Well, yeah. And it makes me think about, like, you both talked about stories, like as you had the opportunity to be scouts of youth, and as your families went through transition, as your parents each, divorced, scouting was like a thread that helped pull you through that. And I know Stephen, my husband, scouting was absolutely fundamental to getting him through a time in his life when he didn't have the support at home that he needed. So I think that's why so many women look back now and, wish they could have had also those opportunities, not just to do the activities, but to be a part of that community that you're a part of when you are a scout.
Right.
Andrew, did the mentoring and connection with older people that have more experience for your sons, did that stop when they graduated out of the scouting program?
No.
Really?
No.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think of Zach in particular, both the boys, but as they have gotten older and they they valued and understand the opportunities there to continue a mentorship with other adults. Gary is one for Zach, who has spent time with Zach, as Zach, like all young men and women, are trying to figure out at age 21, 22, 23, have graduated from college, what do I do next? And then they start sometimes second guessing themselves, and sometimes going, this is harder than I thought it would be. And so for our youth who are now, not adolescent anymore, but they're graduating from college, having that mentorship. And I speak for Gary in particular with, having just a couple of hours to sit down with Zach, and Zach to share with Gary, hey, here's where I'm at in life. I need a little bit of coaching and mentoring on, this is a direction I'm thinking about going. And then I've thought about going this direction. And he was at that time, if you remember, he was trying to figure out, who is Zach Danner? Yeah. What am I going to do? Where am I going? And he had built up himself through hard work and through school that, he had this mission in his head, just like all of us. Well, then the reality comes in, oh my gosh, that mission. So, and he's currently working with, one of our great board members, Mark Hefner, who is coaching and mentoring him in an industry that's pretty tough right now, and that's in commercial real estate. That's where Zach wanted to go. So taking that mentorship from Mark, as he is not the greatest time for commercial real estate, or the greatest time for real estate at all, but that coaching and mentoring still happening today with multiple individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Zach was encouraged to take a risk, and it's really turned around for him because he's a lot happier than where he was when he was doing that soul searching. Is this really where I want to be and what I want to do?
Yeah.
And you talked about 48 years ago, you said you still are connected to some of those boys who are now grown men with families of their own.
It's life-changing when a former scout brings their grandkids around and wants you to be in their life. It's been life-changing for me because I've grown as a person by my association. It's not just the youth. The adults that continue in association with scouting get much more than they give. And some of us give a lot, but still, I think of the lifelong friends, the relationships, the skills. But most of all, I think of that that connection in the community. It's like a web of life. Scouting is life because it crosses over everything. And so the Forest Service has a fair number of scouting alumni.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a good reason, the connection to the outdoors and natural resources. But it helped me, my association with scouting, it helped me tremendously with that connection to my male counterparts who were my colleagues at that point. And later, it allowed me to be their leader and to do that comfortably and understand, where we could go together. So the youth, like I see Zach and Patrick in one way. I see Stephen in another way.
Yeah.
I see Gary in a third way. All of them affected by scouting in their youth or their children's youth. And because I don't have children of my own, I have children and grandchildren because of this. And that's very enriching, and I think you would.
Yeah, I so frequently get asked about my kids in the program, and people always do a little bit of a double take when I say, well, I actually don't have any kids I gave birth to, right? But I have a lot of kids in the program.
You sure do.
And I always answer it that way, right? Well, I don't have any kids I gave birth to that are in the program, but I have a lot of kids. And what's rising for me as I'm listening to you guys is belonging.
Right.
Think
It's a
about
great
how
word.
important belonging is always, but particularly right now.
Yeah.
In our polarized communities where people are tagged with a certain, identifier and then treated as if that's all that they are. And so we have all just been talking about how even as adults, Scouting is a place where we know that we belong, a community we know we could go anywhere in this country or this world and enter into a scout troop, and we would feel like we belong there. That's what we're giving. And that's why it's so important to me, and I know to you guys, that we truly are ready to serve every child, because that sense of belonging gives you confidence from which you can. I mean, Zach is doing a hard thing right now
He is.
as he tries to break into an industry that's incredibly demanding. And this is a tough time to be trying to break into that field. But he's got courage and resolve, and he's got a place he belongs, which maybe helps shore him up for the long journey he's on, right, to get established in that field. I think we can't underestimate the power of belonging. And it's why our commitment to welcoming every youth is absolutely essential and part of the secret sauce of Scouting.
Absolutely. That's what came up for me too, that sense of belonging. And looking at it another way, we know that there's a loneliness epidemic, and this family really faced with that. And so not just for the kids, but my gosh, we have an opportunity to come together and be with other people who are trying to raise the best little humans that they possibly can. I mean, that's just one of the most beautiful things that I've ever really thought of, is that this is a community that we want you to be a part of. We want people to be part of. And there's so much to gain by being part of it.
Yeah. I'd like to take some of these thoughts because I like to look ahead. I'm a forward looker. And when I look ahead, one of the things that I maybe wish for and see where we're going in our council is more community engagement, strengthen relationships in schools and churches, and that increased visibility so that people know where to go. They know where to engage and bring their children and help raise those great little humans, as you said. So I feel like we have much work to do in that regard in our communities. And have you ever met somebody who was a former scout? And there are probably some of them out there as adults. And they said their lead out was, boy, that was terrible. I wished I never was a scout. What they say to me is, I wish I'd stayed longer.
Yeah.
We moved and I couldn't find a unit. I got interested in other things and I really regret it. All of those stories. But they took learnings from that. And so that's why I want to spread it out to everybody. And I want the communities to know we're there. We can help them.
When I hear that, if you think about those individuals that left the program at whatever age, not that people would make up that they were in scouting, but they all have these stories.
Right.
And you immediately relate to them. You just, whether it was a camp story.
The rainy camp out.
Yeah, the rainy
whatever
camp
it was.
Yeah.
The grease stew.
Yeah. I went to Philmont or the sea base.
Johnny forgot the can opener.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we didn't bring a can.
Right.
And it's also amazing, these same individuals, and even those that, stayed in the program many, many years, a lot of them still remember, back to mentorship, they remember their scoutmasters.
Right.
They remember their den moms. They remember Linda Henniger. She was to this day, I still remember my den mom. And the influence that she had on me. And so it's just to hear those stories and the people that they, that still to this day made an impact on their lives enough that 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, they still remember those individuals.
Remember when we were looking for building sites and the one leasing agent was reciting the scout oath and
Exactly.
As we all walked in.
So,
Yes, I remember exactly.
So I was at Camp Baldwin recently, last summer, and I was walking around talking to unit leaders and youth, and these young girls wanted me to come and talk to them. So their senior patrol leader got the girls together and I came over. This was not scripted. And so we sat down and they said, we want to know what you do in scouting and why you have all those patches on your shirt. And I said, well, they're kind of like merit badges. Tell me about your merit badges. And so it was pretty inspiring to me to be able to have a direct interaction and try to encourage these young scouts on their journey, because they were curious and they found the courage to ask me. And then they asked me some other questions, and they said, would you do a camp inspection? Which I thought was kind of interesting. I think it's because my uniform made me look sort of official or something. But I was doing this camp inspection with them, and they said, but don't go over in Nap. Don't go over there. And I said, well, why not? They were going on an overnight horse trek, and they were gathering all their gear there. Now, I couldn't have imagined being able to do that as a girl. And it sort of chokes me up now because of the opportunity we're giving those girls and what they can give back in the future. We're doing the right thing.
You know, there's two things that are really rising for me right now. First, Andrew, was triggered by the reflection that you were sharing that was reminding me, you know, sometimes scouting gets labeled as out of date or out of touch. You know, that was a lovely thing at some point in American history, as if that point is past us. It is abundantly clear in this conversation, this point is nowhere near past us, right? We are as relevant as an organization today as we've been for over 100 years. And our challenge and our opportunity, if we take it, is to make sure that we're continuing to be in touch with where our youth are today, and that scouting is letting its programs adapt to meet that moment. For example, right, we don't have all the same merit badges today that we had 80 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
We've retired some, we've added some new ones.
We were just stalking.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's such a, that's to our point.
Retire that
We
one.
can and do change.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
know,
And we have, and we will.
And that, exactly, that's our opportunity, is to listen to our young people who are the consumers of our program, right? We can talk all day long. We're not the consumers of the program. Our young people are. And so we listen to those voices and we think, how are they learning? How are they interacting? And we take the same values, the same ethical leadership and decision-making, and we package it in a way that resonates for kids in 2024. The other thing, Kathleen, came out of your experience with those young ladies. I've had a similar opportunity, right? They're not always used to seeing a woman in scouting in a position of leadership authority, right? Because traditionally those roles have gone more to men. And so it powerful for them to have a female like yourself who they could look up to. And they could think, well, if Kathleen Jordan can do this, then I can do this, right? Someday, when I'm not a youth, I can be an adult in this program. And that's also, look around our table. We are a diverse group right here. It is incredibly important that the kids that join scouting see the diversity that we represent today and know that all of us are here thriving in this movement, and that they will someday be the us around this table. It gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, it does. Me too. Our unit, when we found out that we were going to be able to start a unit for young females, we were very excited. We embraced it very quickly and identified a female scoutmaster very quickly. And it was amazing to see her take that unit, brand new, coaching, mentoring, guiding, and, 8 young women coming in the program, all of them brand new. Some of them had brothers, most of them didn't. And to see the transformation, not only of the adult leader now leading these young women, but the young women looking up, just like you said, are looking up to, Mrs. Blankenstein, amazing scout leader. And you could just see that back to mentoring and coaching. And it just, for me to watch all of this take place over a 3-4 year period, amazing. And having our female scouts have that, as we talk about adult association, but not only adult association, but, with the same gender, having, Mrs. Blankenstein be that lead.
Be that female role model.
Be that female role model.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And, working with young men for a lot of my career, they also didn't always have a female role model that did the things I did. And so they were changed by that. And I've had a number of young men, as they've become adults, say that to me. We saw women differently because we knew you when we were boys.
Right.
And, you went camping and on 50 milers and on canoe trips. And so it seemed normal to us.
Breaks down some of those gender stereotypes.
Right.
About what activities men like or women like.
Right.
Challenges those, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, what do you think makes us relevant, and why should it matter today?
I think about, for relevant, the organizations that we have worked with. I'm thinking of L'Arche right now, L'Arche Portland, and they are an amazing organization, worldwide organization, but here in Portland, and they provide a safe, loving home for those with those with and without intellectual disabilities. And the relevant portion is that we are out there, and I could think of many of projects we've done, Eagle projects and non-Eagle projects, because this organization, like many, as Kaleen could attest to, they're hurting right now. Financially, they are struggling, many of the nonprofits today, and the things that they would like to get done, or they either can't afford the labor, they don't have the resources. So the relevant portion is that we are relevant in the community. We are out there providing service to the community to make our community better.
When someone asks me what it is that I do for a living, I don't start with I'm Scout Executive and CEO. Rather, I answer with I'm passionate about giving kids the opportunity to grow, learn, build character, and develop into tomorrow's ethical leaders. And I am very, very fortunate to work for a community enrichment organization that does just that. I think we all want ethical and character-driven leaders for this country and for this world. That's why we're relevant, because this is something that is tried, trusted, and proven that we do as an organization.
Yeah, great.
That really resonates.
Yes, absolutely.
I think about that where are we headed question. And, while I'm holding the magic wand, the way that I really see that is we know, we've just been discussing that the problems of our world today are complex. And the better that we equip young people with the skills of leadership, which means, right, how do you work in a team? How do you find consensus with people that you don't start in the same place with? How do you relate to somebody that doesn't look like you or talk like you or have the same family beliefs that you had? The quicker we can equip people with those skills, the sooner that they'll be able to, out in their environments, make progress on whatever the myriad of things are that they're dealing with in college or as adults or as they start families. And so the long view for me is that what scouting brings to young people and to the adults that lead them is not only needed today as much as ever, but it might be more important today, even due to the complexity of our world, than it's ever been. And so then where are we headed needs to be, okay, if we believe in the strength of that, and I know that we all do, then how do we package that in a way that gets today's kids and families pumped about joining? Right. How do we share it with families that have maybe never had the opportunity to encounter scouting or to consider that scouting might be for them because the people that they've always historically seen scouting maybe don't look like they do? So we need to break down that barrier and make sure that the welcome is long and loud, that every one of you out there can have a place in this movement, and we want you to come in. And we want to give you not only these long-term character development leadership skills that are going to serve you in your family, raising your kids, in your job, whatever you may do, but also we want you to have just a tremendous amount of fun, adventuring, and doing all these really cool things that you didn't get to do. How many scouts have you talked to that said, if my friends really understood what I get to do, they would want to scout too?
Yes.
So to me, that's our challenge, you guys, is how do we help spread the message about all the cool things you get to do to our youth, right? So that they want to come and do those things. And at the same time that we are drawing in the youth with all of our fun activities and ways to learn and try new things, we're also talking to mom and dad about these long-term skills, these skills that you're going to learn in scouting that are going to carry you through adulthood, even beyond the part that you want to run and jump off the pier and cannonball into the lake. Right. So I think,
Do you ever stop wanting to do that?
no, I do not. But I think that's what it's about. Like we need a refresh of how we're connecting to people, but who we fundamentally are and what we fundamentally do is as sound today as it was 110 years.
Yeah.
And what all of you are saying, all three of you, also leads me to another area of relevance that's maybe a little more practical or down to earth. And that is, at one point in my career, we had 6,000 employees in the organization, and I was responsible for managing the human resources part of the organization. And we would get sometimes 500 or 1,000 applicants for open vacancy or positions. Now, when you have that much to sort through, you have to have some methodology. And these were for crew members or crew leaders or new employees, usually I'm talking about. And so flatly, one of the things we did is if somebody put on their resume that they'd been involved in scouting, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and to be fair, FFA and 4-H and some of those youth programs, but we already knew they had some of the skills that we wanted.
Boom, they go in the look.
Boom, they made the first cut. And of course, there were other things. Could you read the resume and that kind of stuff? But the real basic parts. But those young adults you could read there. And they had, if they were an Eagle Scout or a Gold Award Girl Scout, they got through the next hoop. So, you're going from maybe 1,000 candidates to 200 candidates to 100 candidates or 50 candidates. And then if you ever, if we're crew leader, you might do a person, an in-person interview or a telephone interview with these people, or you might check a few references. Universally, we didn't have somebody say, well, that person, no, I wouldn't hire that person. We got, what they did in scouting and that, oh, by the way, they had to mow lawns to earn money to go to summer camp. And so they already have some job skills. So that's a very practical thing. It's also very practical when you go to university and beyond. It never goes away. Your scouting accomplishments as a youth is kind of like, they used to say your grade point average from high school will never go away. It's always there. It's like your permanent record. Scouting, in a good way, is part of your permanent record. Not only does it write itself on you and in your heart, but it also is a tangible accomplishment or accomplishments you can share. And I have never hired a youth as a young adult who had that kind of scouting background that failed. They have never failed. And that speaks really highly for what we do. And that's really practical. And mom and dad, but that speaks to them, doesn't it? Yeah, be prepared. Be prepared for life is not just a slogan.
And so where do you think we're headed here in scouting in the Boy Scouts of America and the Cascade Pacific Council? What does the future really look like to you?
I hope where we're headed is exactly what we've just been talking about. That it's a moment which we should be continually having. Any organization, any company, the Nikes that Nike sells today don't look like the Nikes that they sold back in 1970 when they started, but they're still Nikes, and everybody still recognizes them as Nikes. So where I hope we're headed is there. We now serve girls and boys and youth of every gender identity. We're ready as a movement for a brand refresh and a brand that everybody can see themselves in and identify with. And it's the same thing in our product, which is the programs we offer, right? Scouts PSA and Cubs and Venturing and Sea Scouts Exploring. Those need to be refreshed to resonate with what the kids want today. but they're still recognizable as Scouts VSA and Cub Scouts and ex-mentoring, right? So that's where I think that we are headed, is we need to be headed towards it's tradition rich, not tradition bound. We're going to hold on to what we know makes it scouting, but we're going to let it be flexible enough to really attract the numbers of kids that we know with total certainty that the movement can truly and should truly start. And I think that it's all about having the courage as a movement to lean into that and then to get excited, right? Like, we need to see the growth that we want as this opportunity that we're going to march into and embrace. And I think that enthusiasm is infectious, and it will attract exactly those kids and families that we want to serve.
Well said.
Well said. Speechless there now. I'm never speechless.
That's true. You're not.
What I'm excited about and what I see is I wouldn't have been a commissioner this long if I didn't love scouting as it exists in the unit. Every unit in every council, to me, should provide a high-quality program that is recognizable unit to unit and that provides that safe place to grow and to learn. And for me, the more excited I get about that, and the more units that I see that are providing that program, the more hope I have for the continuity and the future of scouting, because it doesn't really matter what you look like or what your language is. That common experience will help bind us together. As we were saying, we were all saying earlier, that common experience is huge in connecting people. And I know you've gone to World Jamborees, and so you told me about your experiences there and how that's so powerful, because it's a world of scouting. It's not a CPC scouting. Right. It's not Tigered scouting. It's a world of scouting.
And the kids really, I think about how often I've heard from kids, what they want is to meet other kids. They're so pumped about that. Right. That's what Jamboree and World Jamboree is.
Exactly.
For kids, right?
That synergy of all those youth and adults in one place.
It's not the activities, it's the other kids.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And at World Jamboree, I can't name how many countless times I've always had it. This is just wrapped up my 4th Jamboree, and I've always had an open camp. Bring your friends over. If we don't have food, we'll find it. And there's always plenty of food. And back to World. For World, the Scouts, it happened to be here in America in 2019, but as they're bringing Scouts from all across the world. And I can think of in one particular case where one of our 17-year-old Scouts one evening texts Mr. Danner, of course, 2 others on the call, and of course,
Thank you.
and says, "Hey, I would like to bring some friends over." Absolutely, bring them over. So the next thing I know, this Scout, along with his buddy, show up with these 4 young ladies from Hungary, and it was a great experience. Their English was really good, and I can think of not only in that evening, but we spent, oh my gosh, just 160 countries came to the World Jamboree, and we're all there with with a mission and an accomplishment, and just as one world organization. And it's pretty cool. And back to really what the Scouts want and get from that Jamboree is to have fun and to meet others. Yeah.
I have to tell you a story now from World, because it's so good. It was the day that everybody was arriving. This was 19. As you know, there was weather issues and the transportation challenges. Complex. Yeah. And so there is a unit coming from Italy, and they're delay after delay after delay. It's pouring down rain this day on the arrival day. There's an American unit here camped, and the space next to them is where this Italian unit is going to be camped. It's 9 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. They haven't arrived yet. Downpour. The American kids decide we can't let them show up at like midnight to no tents. So the American unit sets up the entire campsite for this Italian unit, right? So now it's like, I think they arrived at like 2 or 3 in the morning. They arrived
goodness.
so late that they didn't even really go to bed. But they move in then, and now it's fast forward, it's, I don't know, 6, 7 in the morning. The Italian unit starts singing the American unit awake. So they're singing them songs in Italian. They have made breakfast. And when the American kids wake up, the Italian unit is there to serve them breakfast. Like, this is, I mean, I get goosebumps telling you this story. Like, this is what scouting is. That's why there's belonging and why it's so valuable. Those kids will tell that story for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. In terms of what's next and where we're going, the rebrand that you talk about, being able to tell that powerful story is what I see as what's next. To paraphrase somebody, I want our leaders, our volunteers, to go out and proclaim scouting with the confidence of a toddler in a Batman cape.
That's awesome.
Because that's what's needed.
Yeah.
And that's what the rebrand and the sense of belonging is going to get.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, I'll just from operations, that word COVID. And as we've moved past COVID and we're moving forward in our own council, just the energy that's going on right now, particularly this weekend up in Spirit Lake District, they're having a huge coveree. My understanding, 500 plus
Yes.
people, and a lot of them, Paul sent me a message, 40 or 50 brand new adult leaders, adults maybe looking to be future adult leaders. I look at, as the districts are planning their camporees, we just attended a wonderful district dinner in Pacific Shores as they're rebuilding their community and rebuilding scouting out in Astoria and along the coast, 52 people at that dinner. So we're seeing these remarkable things happening that happened before, but are happening again. And Gary, I love it. And we've talked about this over and over is we have to welcome. We have to welcome all. And as we are coaching and mentoring our adult leaders and our youth, that we have to welcome all. And even from welcoming means a lot when I say welcoming all, even a handshake or friendly or acknowledgement when new families come into the unit. But when we see new families come in from all diversity, from all parts of our country and our world, it's incumbent on us as adult leaders to model welcoming, to go over when we don't recognize somebody, to go over and put our hand out. Hi, Kaleen. I'm Andrew. Great to meet you. Welcome.
Right.
Welcome. Just
so glad you're here.
We're glad you're here. And that opens the doors.
What
it really
questions
does.
do you have? How, what made you come out tonight?
Exactly.
All of that. It's not, if we don't make it so hard and we just think about what you would do naturally if you were meeting somebody new, that's all it takes.
Yes. And if we do that, and we are in a lot of cases, but there's cases we're not, but those that can learn and do a better job of that and acknowledge, the doors are wide open. The doors are wide open.
Come on.
Yeah.